are in the edamame patch, and look at, they're just loaded. And today I have a guest helper.
Hello, everyone.
Hey! Hold up that edamame. Look at the crop on that. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull up all of the edamame and harvest them today. I know a lot of you remember what that was like. And we'll be back and show you the haul. Okay, here's the roots of a edamame. And if you can see right here, all these little nodules that are on the roots, this is what the plant uses to take the nitrogen that's in the soil and use that and directly use the nitrogen. If you remember in one of those first videos, I talked about the nitrogen goes to producing strong leaves of the plant. So these are called nitrogen fixating nodules. So they're taking the nitrogen out of the soil and directly so that the plant can use it directly. So very beneficial. Here we are in the edamame patch, which Kristen harvested the other day. And now the cantaloupe row has been fully exposed. I do have a few that are growing. Here's a tiny little one and another one down there. Here's one up here. Another small one there. An extremely ripe one here. So ripe, in fact, that, oh, some little critter has been enjoying that. But on down the row, there's another one over there, which I will pick, and we'll refrigerate it and try that one. These are individual size cantaloupes. They are supposed to be tiny. Here's the area where the edamame was. Again, I had to wet down this ground, mend it a little bit with some more compost, and I wet it really thoroughly. I'm going to go back again and wet it some more before I'm going to plant at least a row of lettuce and maybe try some spinach. I'll probably put a shade cloth over that. I will show you that probably next week as I do it. Here's the pea row. There are a couple that did make it and are crawling up. I had to replant a few more under the cardboards and keep it extra moist in hopes with cooler temperatures we'll get some good germination. And I can get a second crop of sugar snap peas in the fall. Here's the bed that used to have the watermelon in it and the onions. So I started some broccoli seeds indoors, and now I've transplanted them out. I have about 12 of them. Again, I'm putting the cloth over the top to protect it from some of the pests that love to get these brassicas and chew them all up. So, and also it'll help a little bit in the heat department. Although we've been having a stretch of about 5 days here where the weather has stayed, the temperatures have stayed in the upper 70s and maybe low 80s. So it's been a pleasant climate. Hopefully these broccolis will start taking off. Great crops of beautiful paste tomatoes down this row. I did a good picking today, so I don't see too many. See that beautiful red King of the North pepper down there on the last pepper plant? Very exciting. Those Hungarian heart tomatoes are enormous. I'm loving it. I may be growing those next year. They'll make a great sauce tomato. The Candylands are proving to be a huge success. Kristen came and we almost stripped the whole plant of any color at all in some of these, and she took them back. So this is going to be a total success. She thinks I ought to plant a whole entire row of Candylands next year. I might do that. Still a great deal of beets left to harvest. I pulled all the ones that were at least 1.5 to 2 inches in diameter. I pulled those all up. I'm starting to harvest carrots. They are beautiful. Of course, I sent Kristen home with a bunch of them. And we'll see if some of these carrots have started to sprout under this cardboard. And I will probably be pulling that up in a day or two. Here are the ground cherries. And if you can see some of those that are yellowing a little bit, that means they're becoming close to ripening, and they will fall on the ground when they're ripe, and I'll be able to try my first ground cherry. Here's my radish experiment. Remember, I let some radishes go to seed, and now the pods have been turning brown, and so that means that the seeds are becoming ripe inside. They aren't too stiff, they're still a little bit pliable, so the seeds, I think, are still forming, and I'm not going to touch them. I will be planting more radishes, but I don't think I'll be using these seeds. I want them well cured, and I'll use them in the garden next year.
Big wings.
Turkeys are amassing at their gate.
No, Owen.
Gotta go slowly, very
ready?
slowly.
Yeah. Let go.
Gotta be smarter than the turkey.
Here, I'll go around. Good. You go around. Here we go. Hi, guys. Hi, guys. Hi, guys. No, we'll just focus on that one later. Come here, turkey. Turkey. Come here, turkey. Hi, turkey. Oh, yep. Here's our turkey. Here's our turkey. Come on, where are you going? Don't look at Grammy and Grandpa. Come on, turkeys. Hey, big alpha man. Come on, turkeys. Come on, turkeys. There we go. Oh. Turkey. Bro, I need my dog over here. There's one. No, Owen, you got something. Whatever. No, get those in there. Hey, you know what? Yeah. Good job, turkeys. Hey, this. No. Oh, God. All right, ready? Here we go. Nice and easy. Oh, nice and slowly. Here we go. Turkey. Yeah. All right, you come this way. I got him cornered. No, nice, gentle. Oh,
Slow.
Gentle. Oh, gentle. Oh, I don't care. No, it's Owen. Come on. I see. Owen, we can do this again, but look, just be gentle with them. Please be gentle. No, do not let them run. Come on, turkey.
One coming out, Kristen. Okay. Got him. Close the door fast.
Oh my gosh.
Take a bow. Look at the camera. Take a bow. Owen.
Thank you. Is it ready?
Owen.
Good morning, everybody. Grammy in the kitchen. It's tomato processing time. I just wanted to talk to you about this particular tomato. This is still a gardening episode. Weird looking thing here. And this is called cat facing, when a tomato looks as unruly as this. This actually happens to be, in this case, probably 2 tomatoes that were fused together. And it happened that way because the blossoms started out fused together. It's called a fasciated blossom. And it forms a tomato that has bumps and humps and lumps and things like that. They're fused together. So this one was obviously probably 2. There's nothing wrong with it. This is called cat facing on a tomato. Happens when you have a fasciated blossom. Perfectly fine. Happens oftentimes on heirloom tomatoes. So here I am in my shady spot under the bean arbor. Wanted to talk a little bit, a little science, a little plant physiology that goes on in my garden. When we harvested the edamame, we pulled up a root and you saw these little nodules I want to talk a little bit more about that process. Okay, legumes, which are beans, and also include some peas and clover and a few other kind of plants. What happens is in these nodules are a bacteria called rhizobia, and it has a relationship or a partnership with these particular plants. It is a symbiotic relationship. That's a word that you should be familiar with or will be familiar with. And they take nitrogen, the atmospheric nitrogen, and combine it with hydrogen. Hydrogen usually comes in threes, and in order to, if humans were to do it, to try and break that bond, takes a lot of pressure and a lot of heat. But here we have a bacteria that does it with no heat, no pressure, but just totally normally, organically in the soil. And it benefits the plant. As you remember, nitrogen is something that helps the leaves on a plant. It goes up and combines with the photosynthesis and the chlorophyll that takes, water and the CO2 and makes the sugars and the things that are needed for the plants to produce their fruit and thus produce their seeds, so that the plant can then propagate in future generations. So this is a great natural ability for these plants. This makes it a very good agricultural benefit, because then the requirement that farmers have for nitrogen is reduced greatly. Around here you have corn and soybeans planted very frequently, but they're rotated. So the corn is grown and it depletes the soil, and then the next year they grow soybeans. So the bacteria that's present in the soil will form this relationship with the plants and provide lots of nitrogen for those plants, and thus the farmer doesn't have to use as much fertilizer. So anyway, valuable for the plants. Just a little bit of an overview on what nitrogen fixation is all about. I don't till mine under. I could do that. I'm composting all of the bean plants. I compost the bean plants and the edamame plants and everything. So all of that nitrogen fixating bacteria are going to go back into the soil, and my plants are very, very healthy. If your beans plants are not very healthy and they are a nitrogen fixating plant, then you know something is amiss, because they should be a strong plant. Anyway, just a little plant physiology for you. So stay tuned for question and answers. Here I am in my favorite videoing spot in the bean arbor, in the shade while the sun is shining brightly. Not too hot today, just had a little bit of rain and the sun's back out. Had two questions today. One was from Sophie and Claire, and they asked what are my biggest disappointments or fails with the garden this year. Growing season's not totally over, but I can cite one crop that hasn't done very well, and that would be the raspberries. The raspberries fruit twice a year. They send up new canes during the summer months, and then you get a crop in the fall, and if you can get it in before the frost happens, and then you can get another crop. The bigger crop is usually in the early summer. This year's raspberry crop was pretty poor. Even Mary's berries didn't have a whole lot. Good thing I had a few extra bags of raspberries in the freezer from the previous year. So I have some other things that I'm kind of disappointed in, but the raspberries were the biggest, and I'll kind of do a recap at the end of the gardening season, maybe after the first frost, and we'll kind of do an assessment. But thanks for the question, Sophie and Claire. Lisa had a question, and she said, what would I do with too much rain in the garden? Well, haven't had that problem this summer. It's a worse problem in my mind, because if you had too little rain, you can always water as long as you have a water source. Like I got a garden hose, and so I watered every day or every other day. And that seems to have helped. Anyway, but with too much water, you have too much water, seeds wash away or seeds rot in the ground. A seed will need moisture to germinate, but you also want to stress it a little bit so it sends out that root deep down into the soil as an anchor, and to be looking for more moisture in the soil. So if your soil is too wet with too much water, either the seed rots or it develops a very shallow root system, which doesn't help the plant in the structure as it stands up and all of that. It also will wash the soil away if the rains are too hard. And heavy rain can also damage the crops. It can knock things over if they're shallow rooted, and so generally too much rain is not good. It promotes diseases in plants. The powdery mildew, if things don't dry out, your plants are always wet. So it presents a lot of problems. What you can do to circumvent a lot of this is to mulch your ground. Even though I mulch the ground to retain the moisture, you can mulch the ground to keep the top layer drying out a little bit, and promote the loss of soil and the loss of your seeds and things like that. There's not too much you can do. You can just pray for a good amount of rain. Anyway, so that was a great question. Thank you for that, Lisa. And now I will announce the winner is